I do not believe you are bringing us anything new, said convex icosahedron, finally breaking the endless silence. We spoke of the idea of fomenting rebellion, and we rejected it because the numbers didn't support a successful outcome as confidently as the destruction of Confederation Central. What you report, that Glee-Wixix is in league with Junip, only goes to prove the corruption is further spread than we feared. I suspect a new analysis of the data will make the liberation of a planet seem even weaker by comparison.
Weren't you listening? Tamrat demanded. This plan breaks the Phatic Empire but saves millions of lives.
I have already explained to Zeke that those lives are merely statistical noise. They are meaningless in the broad sweep of history.
I do not believe the beings living them would agree with you, Charles said.
Do your friends still have access to the former military tech skills?
Convex icosahedron asked. I shook my head. Just me, I said. Sometimes, at least. Only Tamret knew about the system with the powder and the dye, and I decided to gloss over the details for now. I didn't want the rest of them volunteering to take that kind of risk. Convex icosahedron appeared to think about this. At the very least, colors moved thoughtfully across his head.
Tell me, he said at last, did you speak of the plan to destroy Confederation Central to any of your allies?
Since he was the one who had given me the lie-detecting technology, I had to assume he would know if I told the truth or not. I told Dr. Rube. I totally trust him.
Regardless, he is not going to want his city to be destroyed. That means our window to act is closing. We should launch the offensive at once.
He turned to one of the Fads.
Alert Fleet Command to deploy the—
Come on! I shouted up. I knew that as a grand strategy, interruption would only get me so far. But I wasn't willing to let them steamroll me. I could not accept that instead of coming with a plan to save Confederation Central, I'd sped up the timeline for its destruction. You can't really believe this is the right move. Saving Earth not only weakens the bad guys and exposes Junip, but it keeps beings from being killed. How is that not the better choice? Convex icosahedron needed to think about it for a moment.
You are very spirited, and I admire that, but with your plan there is a chance we will expose ourselves and gain nothing. We shall proceed with our plan. I will promise you once we have destroyed Confederation Central, we will make the liberation of Earth our next priority. I can guarantee that your world will be saved.
Colonel Rage nodded. You can't ask for much more than that. I can, I said, slowly returning to my seat. I get that you want to make sure you win. That makes sense to me. But at a certain point, you have to accept that you're fighting for something, not just looking to beat the other guy.
You seem to have little respect for plans you did not devise yourself,
Convex icosahedron said. Everyone keeps saying that I need to be at the center of things, I answered with a sigh. I really don't. I'll sit the mission out if it means accomplishing the goal.
Our only goal is to break the grip of the Empress,
Adjul Ip said. But at what cost? Niana said. Everyone stared at her, and she suddenly appeared very self-conscious. Yes, for those of you who don't know me, I am Niana Jawat. I'm significantly more intelligent than Zeke, and most importantly, I'm a strategist. Tell us more about yourself, Tamrat mumbled. The point, Niana responded, is not how intelligent I am. The point is that in spite of his limitations, Zeke has struck at the very heart of the matter. I understand you depend heavily on your projections of how your actions will affect the future, but I wonder if you have projected the ramifications of the example of the destruction of Confederation Central. Will future generations, when they encounter a potential threat, choose to destroy rather than to talk or negotiate, because they have learned from the example of the past? Will you, in your desire to sweep the board clear of your enemies, establish a new pattern of bloodshed? Are you, in other words, exchanging one reign of terror for another? Niana's speech, like mine, was met with silence. But this time the quiet felt thoughtful, contemplative, as though they were thinking about what she'd said.
I think she makes a valid point,
Volonic said at last. Thanks, I offered tentatively. Why was Volonic, of all beings, making this pronouncement, like the decision was his?
Several hundred years ago,
Volonic continued,
a culturally important rural city called Obvir was almost entirely destroyed in an earthquake. It shocked the entire world, and soon architects began creating buildings designed to survive such disasters. Were you to visit Rarl today, which I highly recommend, for it is a beautiful place, you would see that the effects of that earthquake in the designs of every large city. You can predict what cities will look like in a few hundred years, and you might possibly be correct. Yet, if a visitor in the past had attempted to predict the course of building design before the disaster of Obvir, those projections would have proved false because a new factor changed everything.
He's talking nonsense, the colonel growled. No, he isn't, I said, looking curiously at Volonic. Inexplicably, he'd nailed it. Here I was, arguing that I should participate in a rebellion to get rid of an alien occupation force from my world. A year ago, no one could have predicted that I would be doing anything like that. But events had changed me. Major events could change entire worlds, entire cultures. We don't have the luxury of worrying about future generations, the colonel explained. A bad plan that works is better than a good plan that doesn't. We have to pursue the lesser of two evils. But the plan I'm talking about isn't evil at all, I said. Isn't that the side we want to be on? Colonel Rage looked away. The others, at least those with faces, appeared impatient. Convex icosahedron inclined his head in my direction, which might have meant anything.
Your emotions cannot defeat our logic,
Adjul-Ip said.
I am afraid we must proceed with the destruction of Confederation Central.
No,
said Convex icosahedron. He was busy typing rapidly on a plasma keyboard that he had summoned.
These beings have pointed out an error in our projections. We did not run all the numbers. We only calculated for political bodies, not individuals. We also failed to factor in how the example of the destruction of Confederation Central would alter future behavior.
I blinked to mask my confusion. I couldn't believe I was right, and that Volonic had convinced Convex icosahedron that I was right. But mentioning this seemed like a bad idea. What does that mean? Colonel Rage asked. Are we going to scrap the winning plan because of the risk of collateral damage? People die, that's a fact of war. Convex icosahedron was still typing furiously.
I have always favored the course that produces the greatest possibility of peace. I believed the destruction of Confederation Central was that course, but I now see that such a course may very likely lead to more bloodshed. You're going to abandon a clear path to victory because of what some pimply kids tell you? The colonel demanded. There was the Colonel Rage I remembered. The guy who would pay any price, no matter how shameful, to complete his mission. He'd seemed reasonable before when he was getting what he wanted, but now that things were turning in my direction, he was showing his true colors. Besides, my complexion happened to be clear at the moment. His insults were lies. Adjul-Ip looked at Colonel Rage.
We value your martial insights, but we cannot refute the data.
The data says that a bunch of kids can't kick an invading army off a planet, the colonel said.
I believe these kids can,
Convex icosahedron said.
If we aid them, I believe they have the skills and motivation to do precisely what we need.
He then stopped typing and looked up at me, or at least positioned his head so as to suggest he was looking.
However, you will have to do something very dangerous if your plan has a likelihood of succeeding.
What else is new? I asked.
Give me an hour to prepare a briefing,
Convex icosahedron said.
Then we will begin the final battle against the Empress.
The mood in the room had changed. The renegades, in general, looked confused. Colonel Rage chewed furiously on his lower lip. As for my friends, well, I don't know that we had any idea how to process this information. We had convinced these guys not to destroy Confederation Central, but that meant we were going to do maybe the most dangerous thing we'd ever attempted.
A moment,
Convex icosahedron said to me as I stood up.
I wish to speak to you in private.
He drew me aside to a corner of the room, while the others exited.
You are keeping a secret from the others,
he said after they were all gone.
About your former tech.
Most of them, yeah, I said. It's to protect them.
I suspected as much,
he said.
But if you wish to continue to keep that secret, then you must commit to a course of action. What you will attempt is much more dangerous than you or the others realize. You had hoped to minimize your risk, but you cannot. Not if you wish to defeat the Empire.
Convex icosahedron told me what I was going to have to do, and really, as these things go, it wasn't so bad. If I could protect my friends and liberate Earth, I was willing to follow his plan and risk my life.